Beatrice, I must have one. Virgil, the texture of a pear. Its consistency is yet another difficult matter to put into words. Some pears are a little crunchy. Beatrice, like an apple. Virgil, no, not at all like an apple. An apple resists being eaten. An apple is not eaten, it is conquered. The crunchiness of a pear is far more appealing. It is giving and fragile. To eat a pear is akin to kissing. Beatrice, oh my, it sounds so good. Virgil, the flesh of a pear can be slightly gritty, and yet it melts in the mouth. Beatrice, is such a thing possible? Virgil, with every pear. And that is only the look, the feel, the smell, the texture. I have not even told you of the taste. Beatrice, my God. Virgil, the taste of a good pear is such that when you eat one, when your teeth sink into the bliss of one, it becomes a wholly engrossing activity. You want to do nothing else but eat your pear. You would rather sit than stand. You would rather be alone than in company. You would rather have silence than music. All your senses but taste fall inactive. You see nothing, you hear nothing, you feel nothing, or only as it helps you to appreciate the divine taste of your pear. Beatrice, but what does it actually taste like? Virgil, a pear tastes like, Virgil struggles. He gives up with a shrug. I don't know. I can't put it into words. A pear tastes like itself. Beatrice, sadly, I wish you had a pear. Virgil, and if I had one, I would give it to you. Silence. Thank you. I'm going to take my glass.
That's one, that is so delicious, that scene. It's so sensuous, so sexy. And we'll talk a bit later about who the characters are who are actually reading that dialogue. I wanted just to deal with something right off the top. We've got to get something cleared up, and that's because I think I'm not qualified to actually be doing this.
Pears and chocolate go well together,
yeah,
actually.
pears and chocolate. I'm thinking about, I was reading a lot of the reviews for your book, and that reviews that became so extraordinary, obviously, to the National Post that they did a front page story about your reviews and the largely negative ones that they were talking about. And my problem is, I have to come clean with, is that I think this book is extraordinary.
Thank you.
It's just an absolute triumph. Have people had a chance to read it yet in this room? It's, yeah, it's, I can't, it's one of those, and this is what your work does, but this one, more than others for me, and maybe there's some personal reasons, I'm actually going to get into that in this interview, but I think that it just, you can't forget it. You don't get past it. Just, I want to clear out that business with the reviews, because I want to know just from you, because I know you've addressed it, this part of the dialogue. Do you think the reviews are really about the book, or do you think they're about the expectations of the book?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'm expecting hatchets in England, I guess, because I was a young unknown colonial. I won the Booker. And the British are a bitter people at times. So in America, I'm not sure it's that. I think it may be the book itself. And it might be surprising to hear, but they haven't bothered me. I must admit, the first negative review, and it was a terrible one in the New York Times, I sort of said, oh God. I was mainly disappointed for my publisher saying, oh God, I hope I don't lose you money. But beyond that, thinking of myself, I said, well, how do I feel about someone not just disliking the book, but hating it, calling it perverse? And I finally realized, well, first of all, she read it, and she obviously engaged with it, she wrestled with it, and she hated it. And well, that's fine then. Obviously, it was pushing buttons that she didn't want to see pushed. It was saying things she didn't want to hear. And so in that sense, it disturbed her, and that's fine. That's exactly what art is supposed to do. So I think positive, negative reviews, at least that means someone has reacted. The worst thing would have been just a shrug. Just, it's neither here nor there, it's just kind of boring, forget it. That's the worst thing. So that and it's interesting, the New York Times review too, in fact, I thought it was fairly cliched. One of the things that she said was that I was trivializing the Holocaust, which I find now is a cliche. It's used so often with the Holocaust. As soon as you veer off course the slightest, you're accused. It's interesting, the word trivialization is nearly exclusively applied to the Holocaust. We do all kinds of things with war, right? We portray war in any number of ways. I've never heard of a veterans group complaining of trivialization. They may accuse it of, this is not true and stuff like that, but never trivialization. Trivialization comes all the time with the Holocaust. And we can discuss why that is. But anyway, that she was using that language, I thought, okay, she doesn't want to go there. She's not interested in looking at Holocaust and allegory. But at least she read it, she engaged with it, and so it doesn't bother me anymore. There's been other negative ones. Washington Post was even worse, and I gather the San Francisco Chronicle. But on the other hand, as you said, there's been some very good ones too. The LA Times, the Seattle newspaper, the Cleveland, and the same thing in the internet. It's either 1 star or 5 stars. And that polarization I find interesting. That means obviously there needs to be discussion. It is something that is still alive, and that's a positive sign, I think.
What you wrestle with, it's interesting that what they have a problem with, what some of the reviewers have a problem with, is a theme in the actual book, which is the idea of, can we discuss the Holocaust? Can the Holocaust be analogous to something? Can the Holocaust be metaphor? Can there be a metaphor about the Holocaust? Is it analogous to anything else? And that's what Henry, your main character, wrestles with as he tries to do exactly what you are attempting to do with your book. So why do you think it's so difficult to create fiction from that historic event?
Well, I think it's because we're setting ourselves up to make it impossible. The fact is, of course, it can be turned into metaphor, and right away the name we commonly give to it is already a metaphor. I mean, Holocaust with a small h, is an innocuous Jewish religious term. It's for a Holocaust was a burnt offering of an animal, a dove, a calf, and the animal would be slaughtered, its blood spread at the foot of the altar, then it would be burnt. It was the fact that the carcass, they'd even do it with bulls at times if it was a major offering, and its carcass would be burnt. And after the events between 33 and 45, people in searching for a name for the event, so hey, you know what, in Judaism, as a burnt offering to God, there's ashes there, ashes here, let's sanctify the victims by calling it the Holocaust with a capital H. So there's already there a metaphor. And is it appropriate? Well, in some ways it's wildly inappropriate. In a Holocaust, small h, Jews were paying obeisance to God. They were revering God. It was a sacred event. And it was animals. It wasn't humans. And in some ways it's wildly inappropriate because if we call it Holocaust with a capital H, that somehow puts the Germans in the position of making a sacrifice to God, which was never their intent. There was nothing sacred in what they did. It was criminal. So in some ways it's wildly inappropriate. However, it has done the job of identifying those events, those terrible events that lasted 12 years. So there's already there a metaphor. And can we turn it into further metaphors, more elaborate ones? Well, in a sense, we have no choice. We live in a time-space continuum. Time eats everything. Instantly, things become the past. This evening will be over shortly. It will be the past. If we care to remember it, we necessarily have to use metaphor. The metaphor of language. We have to appeal to memory. We are, after an event is past, grappling with its representations. So we necessarily have to turn it into metaphor, into representation, otherwise it'll be completely forgotten. And so the question is not, do we turn it into representation, but what kind of representation? And I've noticed that unlike war, which is the other tragedy I often compare it with, is there tends to be an orthodox view of how we represent the Holocaust. The Holocaust is by and large represented by nonfiction.